Hey everybody, I'm the founder of the Dryden Experiment and the owner of Dryden House Publishing. Depending on where you know me from, you may know me as Joel or as Katie. It's kind of hard to tell, but I answer to both of those names, so hi. And I'm going to assume here that you know what the Dryden Experiment is and you know what we're all about, and that you have clicked on a link on Kickstarter that said, see how the game is played here. So what we are looking at is we are looking at the game that we are kickstarting right now. It's set in our Dryden Creative Commons universe, and I'm going to skip all of the talk about how we came to be there and so on and so forth and get straight to the game. Looking specifically at game mechanics and how the game is played, I'm going to do a little bit of a kind of a practice play here for you on the table. This is a minis game. We have rules that are set up for miniatures, and we'll take a look at the miniatures and how they work. They move around and engage each other in combat, and they use a die 6 system. It's turn-based on a die 6 system. The trick is that those games are so expensive, and Nick Mall from Owlman Press had just the most fabulous idea. Let's build our game on cards. So what I'm going to show you today are my proofs, which are not fully edited and are not printed on the card stock. They're printed on paper stock, but I'm going to set them out on the table and talk about how they work and give you sort of a feel for the game. So the first thing that I need to say is that this is the Cirque deck. We are building 3 separate fleets on 3 separate decks. Each of the fleets has its own ships, and then things that are sort of upgrade cards and things that are general to all of the fleets will be common cards. So we have some cards that are specific to decks and some that are common. We are building the Cirque deck first, making sure that we have it proofed and ready, and then we can just sort of swap out art and change the statistics. Different ships have different statistics for different fleets. So I'm going to show you all Cirque. There is some art from some of the other fleets out there on the Kickstarter, and we can certainly get more of that art. All of the art is in-house. We're doing layout now. So I've got proofs. I'm going to show you sort of a mock combat between 2 ships in our universe. So the basic assumption is that we can take something that looks like this, and again, this is a paper stock and not the card stock, and use this in place of a plastic mini, and we can do it for a fraction of the cost. It costs about 8 cents a card to build cards using the RPG Now card builder system. So rather than have troops of orcs or whatever, we have a card like this. Now, this card, if you're going to have a sort of a sophisticated role-playing game, needs to have statistics and things that we know about it, but that's sort of cumbersome to put all on this card. So our idea is that we'll set the card down on the table, and then off on the side we'll have a stats card. Okay, and this is all of the abilities of the ship, and you'll notice that the art matches the ship. Okay, so when you go to play, you set the ships down on the battlefield, and then you set your stat cards over on the side. All right, and that's sort of the basic layout. I can now keep track of my ships and their abilities without having to gunk up my table. All right, but in this case, what we're going to kind of do is we're going to kind of mock up a pair of ships as if we're going to go into battle with them. All right, and I'm going to adjust down. You don't need to see my face anymore. We need to kind of look down at the table. This is space. Space has a lot of very lovely shells in it, and that's okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at 2 ships. Now, ships are built on points. So we're going to start with 2 very different ships. The first one is our Cirque Heavy Combat platform that I looked at just now, and I've lost the control card for it. There we go. It is a very expensive ship. It's a 20-point ship, but you'll notice a lot of 4s over there in the stats and abilities. It's a pretty big bruiser heavy combat platform. And what we're going to do is we're going to set up against it the light strike craft from the same fleet. These are all done, the art by the way, by Don Van Osdal. Terracore was done by Kat Haywood, and Lynn was done by Charlotte Garnier, but those are not yet into proofs, so I'm showing you Cirque proofs. All right, and here's the stats. Now you'll notice that that's a 15 cost ship, which is much less expensive, but it doesn't have nearly as many 4s. Uh-oh, that's because it's not nearly as powerful. So I get ready to build a fleet, and we say we're going to have a 100-point fleet, for example. Well, what does that mean? Okay, well, it's going to cost me 15 points to get into this ship, but I have the ability to modify that ship, and we're going to look at 2 sort of ways that you might modify ships. All right. Now, if you'll notice, the key field we're going to look at right here is the U, and that's the utility. That's how much cool stuff you can mount on a ship, and this ship has a U of 2. All right. So for 2 of you, I am going to put 2 items on my ship. First thing I'm going to put on my ship is a fighter. Now you'll notice that this fighter costs almost as much as the ship, is extremely fast, but does very little else, okay? It does have something kind of handy though. It has a point of utility itself. So onto that ship, I'm going to put a utility. Now this is one of the cards that's universal. Everybody will have the same ship. That is a kamikaze. This allows me to roll the, I think it's structure and firepower combined as a kamikaze attack. But then the ship is destroyed. So I'm going to mount 2 fighters, both of whom have kamikazes on them, on this ship, and that's my ship. So I can calculate the points. It works out actually to 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. This is a 19-point ship. Relatively inexpensive, fairly light on the firepower, but it does have 2 kamikaze attacks. All right, so I'm going to take that ship and I'm going to set it off on the side, all of the cards on it together for right now. Then I'm going to grab this other ship. Now this is a heavy combat platform. Let's look at what this bad dog is capable of. He costs 20 points to get into, but he has 4 points of structure. Okay, I'm sorry, of utility. He also has 4 in structure and 4 in firepower, so he's a bruiser. But notice that movement. Ouch, that's gotta hurt. So with 4 spaces, what would I choose to put on this ship? I'm starting with a base cost of 20. Well, the first thing, and she doesn't actually take a space, I've decided that I want to put a bold captain on my ship. And this is going to give us a little bit of insight into the mechanics of the game. All right. Now, you'll notice that the bold captain gives you a bonus of 1 die on your captain's orders. When you get ready to begin your round of play, one of the things that you do is roll for your captain's orders. It's actually not the first thing that you do in the order of play. But the better your captain is, the more dice they get to roll. And for every success they get on that roll, that's a little pool of die that gets set over on the side that you can then call in. So you get to that really crucial moment in battle. You're about to roll that attack that just has to win, and you've got a couple of captain's dice sitting over here. You can choose to bring those in, so they give you sort of the ability to have a critical attack at a critical moment. And you'll notice that I've added 1 by my choice of captain. Okay, and I've paid 8 for her. Then the other is that she gets a bonus of 1 for firepower rolls. So this bruiser that was already rolling 4 dice, this represents 1 die for each one, so I'm going to roll 4 attack die, now is a 5 attack die ship. Ouch, that's pretty brutal. And I have that emergency die left over. So then this is a systems upgrade card. I get to choose one of the systems on the ship and add +1 to it. So I can add 1 die to firepower. I can add 1 extra space for utility if I wanted. Well, I've gotten lost in structure. I can make my ship sturdier, or I can add 1 movement, which in the case of this ship with 1 movement, I might actually choose to use it for movement. I'm sort of imagining for this battle, though, that I'm setting it in firepower. Okay, just to sort of compare and contrast 2 ships. So I now have a total of 6 firepower because I've gotten 1 from my captain and 1 from my utility. All right, well, then the next one is a systems upgrade. Wait a minute, that's the exact same card. Well, I set myself up for 2 systems upgrades because, God, I love myself. So I'll give myself a 2nd point of movement, too, by upgrading the engine. We sort of recommend, and our playtesters agree, that kind of the thing to do is to get those little sheets for your cards so that then you can use a write-on wipe-off marker right here on the card and not end up marking up the card. But if you wanted to keep track of these things separately with tokens or whatever, you'll see how they end up laying out during combat here in a minute. All right, then the next is I have an automated systems, and this adds 2 dice to the captain's orders roll. Aha! So I will always have at least 3 dice available to roll for the captain's orders to give myself those extra bonuses, because I have a captain that provides me with extra, and then I've also upgraded or automated my systems. Now, auxiliary system, you'll see I've kind of picked one of everything for this ship. Auxiliary system allows a system to continue after it's been damaged. So the first time a given system gets damaged, you mark it off here rather than off on the ship, and you continue to use the system. And I would choose what I wanted to do this for. Did I want to use the utility, which is very important because you'll lose your other upgrades if you don't? Did I want to have that extra structure to keep myself in combat? Am I worried that I'm going to have everything in battle except for firepower? It's really up to me. Losing your engine really sucks. Having play tested several times, I can tell you that's nasty. Now this is an unbalanced battle because this is a very much more expensive ship. Let's look at what I'm looking at in cost. I'm at 20, 28, and then I think each of these is 5, so I've added another 40 points. Well, 20 points, so 40 points altogether. 28 plus 20 is 48 points. So this is a huge bruiser of a ship. We would expect it to beat this lighter fighter, which is appropriate, but it'll kind of allow us to look at how we would play the game, all right? Then the last thing that we need to look at before we're ready to kind of lay things out on the table is a couple of the other cards that exist. And by the way, we did not look at ramming. We did not look at boarding. You can carry Space Marines as in your utility so that you can attempt to board other ships. There's cloaking. How players set up their board initially is guided by the framing drive, which is faster than light travel rules. So we didn't actually touch everything in this card. We just kind of took a sampling of some of the cool stuff. There are also several other captains that we didn't talk about. So this is a sample, a look at how it would behave. All right. Now, you can be affected by terrain features, and I grabbed just a couple of them. I would have grabbed more of them, except I've discovered that if you photocopy in color on two-sided, you end up cutting a bunch of your own cards in half. So don't do that. But I was using the proof set, and I did manage to grab a couple of them. This is an asteroid. It does affect play. Flying into one causes complications for you, as does a nebula. There are also stars and planets, and it is also possible to place space stations, which are ships but have special rules because they don't move. And so these are the sort of things that you would find scattered around, and there are rules for how you decide where they go at the beginning of play. I'm just going to sort of distribute them randomly because I'm not actually playing. All right, and then the last card is a very important card. For those of you who played Car Wars generations ago, you will recognize something very similar to this. Different ships have different rates of turn per move. So we assume in Dryden Space Battles that a move is one length of the card. I'm going to start, let's actually use a card. I'm going to start here, and I'm going to move one length of the card, right? Actually, it would be from bottom to even, like that, is one move of the card. But then I also have the ability to turn, based on the kind of ship I am, 15 degrees, 30 degrees, 45. If you're one of those little bugger fighters, you can turn 90 degrees a move, and that's just insane. But it comes in the deck for you, with you, the control card, okay? It's actually called the navigation card. All right, so here we are. We're about to set up play. I've got a player over here on this side. I'm going to kind of try to keep things all on the screen if I can do that. This must be what it's like to be a weatherman. All right. I'm going to lay out a couple of terrain features. I don't really know what they're doing out here. They're not going to be important to the game, but here we start. We set up the beginning of the game with a nebula and an asteroid. So everything goes under the stats card. I've got my stats card, and I've got all of my upgrades and components, and they all go off on the side so that all that we have on the board is the actual pieces that we're playing with. Okay? Same thing over here. I've got all of my upgrades and all of my goodies underneath my ship, including my captain. Captain, oh my captain. Those all go underneath the stats card. Preferably when your opposing player cannot see them. Your opposing player will have to find out the hard way what your ship is capable of. In fact, if you use the stealth rules, your player may not know where your ship is when play starts, but we're not going to try to emulate that. So that sits over here, and play begins. We've done our pre-selection, and we figured out that this ship is coming in just from the edge of screen because that's handy, and this ship is coming in from the edge of screen over here. So movement happens in alternating turns. The full rules are in the instructions, and I'm not going to try to do them, but you sit down and you go, okay, I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to turn 15%, and that's 1. So if you have a movement, this actually has an engine of 4, so it would have the ability to move 4 times. So he comes around and he comes around and he continues to move until he's done his move. We actually alternate back and forth. I'm not worrying about all of that. And we end up ready to take actions. Well, this ship has a kind of a surprise. It's got a pair of fighters with kamikazes on it. So for one of its actions, it goes boom. Uh-oh, I've got kamikaze fighters. That's terrible bad news. They now go onto the board. And we continue movement. However we do, we end up with a fighter over here and a fighter over here and so on and so forth. Well, in spite of the fact that this ship, and we've also rolled our commander's dice, so this ship will have some available extra dice. In spite of the fact that this ship has enormous firepower, it only has one attack. So he would say, okay, I want to attack, and there are ranges that you can attack, and they are measured on the range card. Okay, I got a 1 and 2. So this target is 2 away, right? And I don't have my dice out, but he says, okay, well, I'm worried about that fighter over there. Boom! And he rolls 93 dice against this fighter's 1 structure, and that's pretty much all she wrote, and we lose the fighter. Now, this fighter shoots back, boom, and does damage to... Let's just pick one. Does damage to the utility. And we lose an automated system. So we lose our captain's upgrades. We might have lost our engine or points out of our engine. We might have lost points out of our structure. If we lose all the points out of the structure, the ship is dead. But as a matter of fact, let's just put that automated system back in there. What he actually lost is his engine. So the rules say that he will now begin to drift. He's lost control, okay? And I believe that the rule is 1 space in the last known direction. I don't actually have the rules out in front of me because I have my big table spread out in front of me. So he's damaged, and he has lost some engine. And he gets shot at by this ship. Maybe damage, maybe not so much damage. So we go back into movement, and we start movement. And this little guy can go anywhere he wants. So he drifts the 1... He decides, you know what, I'd kind of like to be back out. I'm not moving my cards. But that's what would actually happen. And this fighter moves right up close. Okay? Well, we pretty much can anticipate what's going on. We do our rolls. We do our captain's dice. He decides he wants to attack the fighter, but damn the luck, he doesn't manage to kill it. When the fighter attacks, he attacks with a combination of his structure and his firepower, and that gives him 2 dice worth of attack. Boom! Now we'll lose 2 points out of the structure. So once again, we recommend you cover your cards with the little plastic sheets and just mark your structure here, but maybe you take 2 little tokens off, however you do it. However, the fighter is now gone. All right, so this ship drifts. This ship continues to move around. He has a firepower of 3, and there are range rules for how much damage you do at range. So he has to stay fairly close, much closer than the fighter, than the battleship does. But the battleship can't control where he's going. And so the fighter comes around, or the light strike ship does, and we do a final exchange, and it's boom, and it's boom. He has only a structure of 1, though, so he's going to get blown away. Let's just face facts, right? The odds that he's going to survive another round are negligible. So, and that's the outcome that you would expect. Starting with a, I don't remember what this was, a 48-point ship against a 13-point ship. You would expect it to blow it away. But that gives you a sense of how the game plays without going into too much details. I'm 20 minutes into this, playing lightly. You would expect a fleet, a 100-point fleet, once everybody was set up and actually had pieces on the table to play in about an hour, and I didn't want to try to do a whole hour's worth of play. So this is the game that we're kickstarting. I want to ask everybody who sees this and who enjoys it, please give us a like and a thumbs up. Please stop by the Kickstarter. The link will be below. You know, a lot of people don't think about, but if you just back us at $1, that moves us forward in our goal. That improves our statistics out there on Kicktracks and Kickstarter and all of those places that keep track of what's trending, and it really helps us know that we're doing something that you're interested in. So I encourage you to fund at $500,000. Go ahead and make that $500,000 funding donation. I encourage that. But if you don't have that $500,000, a smaller donation, even that dollar donation really helps us out. All right, I'm Joel and/or Katie, and this has been Dryden Space Battles. Thanks very much for joining us.